Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. We've made it through the second week of the class, moving into week 3, which is kind of like our midterm of this 5-week summer course. So I hope you are all hanging in there okay. From what I've seen so far on your weekly discussion post assignments, you're all doing a great job. I've been really impressed with how thoughtfully you've been articulating your educated opinion posts. You're doing a great job crafting educated arguments using citations to support the claims that you're making. And that is just really great to see. Like I've said before, learning how to craft educated, scientifically grounded arguments is one of the core learning objectives of this social problems course. So the fact that we're only 2 weeks in and I'm already seeing such high scores on your weekly discussion post makes me feel good. It sounds like you guys are learning about these social problems, you're applying sociology, you're crafting scientifically grounded arguments. So you're making my job really easy. I have very little to critique when I'm grading those weekly discussion posts, which is great to see. So keep up the good work. So moving into week 3, this should be a little bit of a lighter week for you. Coming out of week 2, you had your weekly discussion post and exam 1 that you had to finish. Week 3, the only assignments you have are your weekly discussion posts. So your weekly discussion educated opinion post and your comments. So a little bit of a lighter week this week. Just as a reminder, in the final week of class, which is only a couple weeks away, you do have a final project and an exam. So if you want to get started on your final project, I do have all of the information for your Solving Social Problems infographic provided in a content folder here. If you just go to our course content, you will see the Solving Social Problems infographic folder here. If you click on that, you'll see all of the instructions, the guidelines and grading rubric for it. I even created a video to show you what an infographic is and how you can create an infographic using a really user-friendly online platform. And then I even provided some examples of an infographic for this project so you can see exactly what I'm looking for. So I'll talk a little bit more about this in future weeks. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me via email. But just to keep that in mind, your final week of class is going to be a little bit heavy with our assignments. So during these kind of easier weeks, weeks 3 and 4, if you want to get started on your final project for this class, if you have a little extra time, that might be something you want to consider. So these resources are available to you on Blackboard. Feel free to check them out if and when you feel inclined to do so. But for now, let me go back to our week 3 content folder here and show you what we are going to be working through this week. Your to-do list this week, like I said, pretty light. The first thing on there is I'm asking if you would please complete a mid-course evaluation. So you'll see the link to the survey for the mid-course evaluation right here in the week 3 content folder. Basically, this is just 5 or 6 short, open-ended questions. I'm just seeking your feedback about how the course is going so far. You know, I really appreciate student evaluations at the end of the semester because they're really helpful tools to learn what's worked and what didn't work, so I can apply that in future semesters. But the thing that sucks about evaluations at the end of the semester is that I can't apply any of that feedback to make adjustments for that particular group of students in that course. So I always try and gauge the pulse of my students in the middle of the course, just so I can see what you're liking about the course, what you're not liking, if you have any suggestions for improvement. That way I can make tweaks to our course now before it's too late and make these last few weeks of the course more enjoyable, more thought-provoking, more educational for you. So this is optional. You don't need to complete this. It's not graded, but it is anonymous, so I don't know who's saying what comments. So you can be as honest and candid as you want in this. And I do appreciate the constructive feedback because at the end of the day, my number one goal as a teacher is I want my students to learn. And I think students learn best when they are feeling engaged with the content, when they're interested in the subject matter, and when they like learning, when learning is enjoyable. So please tell me what I can do to make this course best for you. So other than that, this week, the 2 topics we're going to be covering are racism, white privilege, and then police brutality and mass incarceration. So module 3.1, if you open that up, you'll see all the content arranged in here. First few pieces kind of just explain what race is and how racism and race even became things in our society. Race is really interesting from a sociological perspective because while it seems like something that is inherently biological, in sociology, we approach race from the idea that it is a social construct. which means that race only has meaning in our society because we as people decided that something like skin color was going to be important. So that's something that a lot of people really struggle with grappling. So I have a few videos, and definitely in the lecture videos for this week, I really break down what it means to say that race is a social construct. And that's really important to understand when we're talking about racism from a sociological perspective, because if we created race, we created racism as a society. And that also means that we as a society have the ability to fix problems like racism. So the content this week is probably going to be a little uncomfortable. This is one of those topics that is really sensitive and difficult for a lot of people to discuss, especially if you're white or white passing. It can be difficult to acknowledge how all of us, myself included as a white individual, can kind of subconsciously contribute to racial biases and even systemic racism in ways that maybe we aren't even aware of. So this week, probably more than any week in this course, is really going to depend on you leaning into those uncomfortable feelings that you might have. And again, I always encourage you, whenever you're feeling any discomfort reading through or viewing this content, ask yourself a sociologist's favorite question: why? Why am I feeling uncomfortable reading about this? Oftentimes when we're feeling uncomfortable, it's because we're starting to reflect upon or realize that maybe we have some privileges that we took for granted, and that can make us feel a little uneasy. So rather than just sitting in that discomfort and feeling bad about yourself, kind of turn it into an action move. What can I do to address these privileges that I have? What can I do to become more involved in anti-racism in our society? So hopefully you enjoy this content and find it really thought-provoking and interesting, even if it is a little bit uncomfortable to get through. I just want to point out what I think is one of the most important pieces of content in this folder, and that is the documentary 13th. I have the link for it in here somewhere, but basically it's a feature-length documentary that does a really good job kind of unpacking the social construction of race and racism in America and connecting racism today to the prison industrial complex, which is a good transition into our next module folder for week 3, which has to do with social problems pertaining to policing and criminal justice. So in this folder, this is where you will find the link to 13th, the feature-length documentary here. It is a little long. It's about an hour and a half long, so the longest piece of content I'm asking you to view this week, but it is a really, really informative and thought-provoking documentary, so I definitely encourage you to look at that. As you can anticipate, a lot of the social problems in our society today pertaining to criminal justice, like mass incarceration in the prison industrial complex, police brutality, are kind of intersectionally linked with social problems that have to do with racism and social class inequalities such as poverty, which we talked about in week 2. So be thinking as you're viewing through this content, and especially in this module on police brutality and mass incarceration, think about how individuals' identities intersect in unique ways that make them more susceptible to experience social problems pertaining to policing and mass incarceration in the United States. So again, content this week might be the most uncomfortable that we work through, but again, I strongly encourage you, lean into those feelings of discomfort. If you ever want to talk it out one-on-one and try and get a better sociological understanding about why these social problems exist, how they affect you, how your biases and privileges may contribute to these problems, I'm always happy to have those one-on-one conversations. We can definitely schedule a WebEx meeting to just talk it out, because this stuff is a little bit messy, but it gets easier the more you engage with it, the more you lean into it and actually critically reflect on your feelings and ideas, previous behaviors, where you learned those behaviors and values and beliefs. This gets a lot easier to work with. So I'm happy to have those conversations. As always, reach out via email if you have any questions or concerns. I hope you enjoy this week's content. Take care, everybody.